Test, test. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kelly Colias. I am a 3L here at Villanova Law. I am also a Scarpa Fellow with the Scarpa Center for Entrepreneurship and Law. And I have the pleasure to be here today with Alexis and Terrence, speaking a little more about Terrence and his background. Alexis, do you want to share a little more about yourself too?
Yeah, I'm Alexis Cheatham. I'm a 2L and I'm part of Black Law Students Association. And we are so happy to have you all here with us today. Just another friendly reminder, we do have the raffle going on. So as you go in and out, while we drink some good wine, have a good time, good conversation, can't wait.
And I have the pleasure of introducing Terrence, so you can just sit here and look pretty as you are doing. um, so Terrence is our entrepreneur in residence this semester, and he is nothing short but amazing. He worked at IBM, starting out with his career, and then he led entrepreneurship teams for IBM Watson Analytics, and that ended up generating millions of dollars in revenue. Additionally, Terrence used to sell cloud software, and he taught the importance of data, which led him to fall in love with analytics and numbers. And eventually, and he'll tell you a little more about it later, led him to Michael Lavelle Wines, which is why he's here today, his business that he co-founded and has grown to be a very successful part of his life and his love for wine. And he was born and raised in the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the most important thing.
yeah, that's absolutely the most important thing. Well, one, thank you for having me. Thank you
Yeah.
all for being here. I will say that I feel extremely comfortable being here. I am in a room full of dreamers, other fellow entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and the time that I've been here at Villanova has been nothing short of amazing. So thank you both for having me.
Yeah. Speaking of being comfortable, I know we talked about being authentic, right? So how important is it to be an authentic entrepreneur, right? So I know we talked about what does D&I mean to you being a Black entrepreneur, and what does it mean to start a company? So what does it mean to show up as yourself, show up to your work every single day as you?
I mean, you asked me like three questions at once, but um, honestly, being authentic is as natural as breathing to me at this point, right? I think it's not just important, but it's fundamental for any entrepreneur to be authentic in any and every space that they walk into. In order for you to be proud of what you make, you want to know that it came from a true and genuine place. And that's what Michael Lavelle is. And specifically thinking about the wine industry, which is the industry we're in, the story that goes with the wine is just as important as the contents of the wine, right? So if folks want to understand the process of our wine, our vision, right, our marketing, all of that radiates authenticity. Um, for context, when we came into this business, we did not have any type of celebrity backing. All right, we didn't have the privilege of saying we worked for someone, so you should try our wines, right? Or 10, 20 years in the wine and spirits business to justify why you should drink our wines. Yet our brand continues to show up in spaces with brands that do. And I attribute that to our entrepreneurial savvy. I attribute that to our authenticity, that when people pick up a glass of Michael Lavelle, yes, they know that our commitment to craftsmanship is there, but also they relate to our story, which is a story of building a dream from nothing to actually something, right? And that is why we continue to thrive in this space today. And I think that's why authenticity is important.
I completely agree. And even just getting to talk to you, I can tell how authentic you are. Not only that, but how passionate you are
Thank you.
about what you're working on.
Thank you.
And I can tell you get up every day and you're excited to be here and excited to see where, the next step takes you.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to circle back to the beginning a little bit
Uh,
and ask you about the first moment you fell in love with wine.
Well, that's a twofold question for me, and that's a great question, right? So many of you may not know, but I am from Chicago, South Side of Chicago. If you've ever been there, there's no vineyards in the South Side of Chicago whatsoever. But my grandmother actually used to make wine, and it was in our backyard, a very small patch, enough for her and her girlfriends to drink wine, and it was cheap child labor for us, for her really, because we got to mash the grapes and make it for her. I tell this because it is a part of what made me comfortable around wine. Now, if you ask me what kind of wine it was, what kind of grape it was, I don't know. It could have been a weed, for all I knew, right? But also, as I got older, I also thought this was normal, right? I thought everyone drank wine that came from their backyard, and it wasn't until I got a little bit older and I was actually backpacking in Europe with my girlfriend at the time, We were in Rome, and it's the evening time. We're walking down this cobbled road, and there was this restaurant, probably 6, 8 seats total, that was owned by this woman who similarly sat us down, poured us a glass of wine, and shared that she had taken over her family's winery, and these were wines from that backyard, right, from that vineyard. And I had an aha moment that she and I could have a conversation, vastly different backgrounds, right? I being a black guy from Chicago, her being a woman from native of Italy. But we had a common bond around wine. All right, and so that entire evening, all she did was pour some of her favorite wines. And you think about all the rich history that goes into wine, that you can have a Chenin Blanc from California, you can have a Chenin Blanc from South Africa, you can have a Chenin Blanc from Italy, right? And they're all gonna have different experiences tied to how they were made. That was the moment that I fell in love, that I wanted to be a part of that conversation, right? Um, that was the genesis of it all for me.
I love that. I can relate definitely. I mean, I told you I have my grandma here today. She doesn't speak English, so she has no idea I'm talking about her right now. That's okay.
I love that.
But
I love that. Shout out to
yeah,
grandma.
yeah.
Thank you for being here, grandma.
Yeah, so like I grew up having her foods and I thought that was normal too, like making spanakopita
Yeah,
and making phyllo from scratch, like those kind of
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Um, but I wanted to pass it on to Alexis to ask a little bit more about your wine journey and kind of how you navigated that.
Nice.
Yeah, so looking back, right, you working at IBM and you make this like pivot. How do you think that your experience in time, just being like reflective, if you go back, obviously we can't change the past, but what have you learned and what are you still learning to present day that has helped you?
Well, you really want me to think while I'm
Yeah,
up
of
here.
course, yeah.
If I had to reflect on our journey, there isn't much that I would change about it. Like the journey of Michael Lavelle has been filled with triumph. It's been filled with learning curves, but it also made us the entrepreneurs that we are today. It made our company what it is today, and I wouldn't change any of those details. But if I had the privilege of talking to my younger self during that time, I would tell myself to get better at handling hard. Every level of entrepreneurship, you're going to be met with a faster, stronger, quicker level of hard just when you mastered the previous level. And it took me a while to grasp that concept that any purpose-driven mission is going to be hard, right? No one sets off to say, hey, I want to change the face of the world and to be not met with opposition, right? You want to have a successful marriage. It's hard. It's going to require some effort, some sacrifice. You want to manage a successful business. It's going to require hard, times and sacrifice. And I think I would have wrapped my mind around that concept a lot sooner and just embraced the hardship, right? Instead of trying to avoid it or put it off. I'd also learn to ignore the noise, right? There's a lot of noise. A lot of people speaking from the rafters who aren't actually in the field doing what you're doing. And if you don't know how to deal with criticism, again, everybody's peak of success is going to look different than yours, right? And so you have to ignore certain things to continue on your mission going forward.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about, challenges, you to perseverance, right? Just bouncing back because I think on your journey you probably thought, okay, I'm gonna just start this brand, my group of guys, it's gonna be great, but there are also risks, right? And so Kelly, I just want to pass to you and ask, Terrence about that.
Well, I mean, no, but even in passing it off
Yeah.
to Kels, I think if we can be honest here, right, this is a company that was started by 4 young black men, right? And entering a space where there's not many of us, right, in that space, we are going to be challenged for our perspective, right? For our knowledge of the industry, right? We're going to be met with opposition at multiple corners, right? And so I understood, at the very beginning that I was going to be met with no a lot. Like I've actually received way more no's than yeses, right? And so I think just kind of building on that point, right? Going back to authenticity and even just how we navigated that space. What I would tell myself again, just get used to those no's. But Kelly, you were gonna ask about risk averse.
Yeah, no, you're good. I think it was great, like all the themes you touched on just now, like perseverance, like Alexis said. But one word when we were first talking with you, I thought a lot about your resilience and your ability to keep going forward. And I think that does tie a lot into risk adversity. So a little bit about me, I'm a Scarpa Fellow, but
Yeah.
I am also in the MBA program at Villanova.
Okay.
So I kind of wear these two hats, and I'm exposed to law and business students. I love it. Everyone's very different, but I do tend to see that, at least with the law students, we're just kind of trained to be more risk averse. We're meant to kind of see all the things that could go wrong and tidy it up and, make it a nice little box. But business isn't that way.
Not at all.
Yeah. And, I've always been more willing to take risks. I think I'm just lucky that my parents were both entrepreneurs. But I kind of wanted to hear your perspective on if you are someone who's more on that law student side or you are a law student, like how do you break away from that? Like, how do you kind of tell yourself that you're able to be more risk averse and take these risks? Like, what is going to get you there?
Well, that's a great question. The wine industry isn't unlike any other entrepreneurial venture, right? You have to have a healthy amount of, balancing what is risk averse and then strategic risk taking. And the key there is strategic risk taking, right? We took a lot of strategic risk very early on that propelled us forward. For example, when we first got into this business, there's a lot of presumptions around what our wine should taste like, who our wine is actually intended for. And we were advised to make more popular wines, right, like a Chardonnay versus a Chenin Blanc, because the perceived demographic of who would be drinking our wines would be more receptive to that. Another example is that, we use less sugar in our winemaking process, right? That's intentional. One, I don't want you all having headaches the morning after you're drinking our wine, right? But it's also a healthier option as well. But again, if you're going off of certain data, it would lead you to believe that people want sweeter wines, right? So we took a risk of going against the advisement of people who've been in the industry for 15, 20 years. And that was very early on in our careers, and people thought we were foolish for doing certain things. But at that point, we were only in one market, right? Now we're in 16 as of yesterday, right? 16 markets, and markets is just U.S. territory, so think states, right? We've expanded over the past 4 years from 0 to having representation in 16 states. And so risk taking is necessary to propel yourself forward, but it's also understanding the market that you serve, right? Understanding your consumers and the products that you're pushing and what their response will be.
And I think also kind of tying into that, like another kind of thing you kind of highlighted there was underestimation, right? People wanted you to go a certain way and they thought that if you went another way, it wasn't going to work. And I think, obviously, you're a big part of this company and you have these amazing co-founders. You'll see some images above us over this slideshow, but how did you guys motivate each other or kind of like not let that get to you?
Well, I mean, I would even say if it didn't work, I'd be able to live with that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's what we believed in. And going back to authenticity, had we went that route, it was something that we believed in. And if it wasn't successful, then that's fine. We would have learned the lesson and we would have bounced back. In terms of pushing ourselves forward, we believe so much in our vision of making quality wine accessible, and in who the face and purveyor of quality wine is, that you can look like myself and make quality wine products, that these wines can be discoverable in Michelin star restaurants, that they can be enjoyed by people of all walks of life, right? We believe so deeply in that mission that a couple of no's isn't going to deter us, from making that happen, and it hasn't, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a bigger thing that I would impart on younger entrepreneurs, again, is to build up that resilience,
Yeah.
to those no's, because they're going to happen.
And also, I feel like it kind of goes to show like maybe you didn't come from this incredible wine background,
No,
but
no,
you were willing to take the time to learn about something you're passionate about.
yeah,
And that's what honestly probably let you be even more successful than people thought you would be and let you grow to this point and inspire other people.
yeah.
So,
I am forever a student of wine, right? Like
yes.
even on my own social media, I will post other wine brands, right? Because I am that passionate about understanding the thousands of wines that are out there, right? And even on my journey now, I still sit with other winemakers to understand their process. I still travel to spend time and not make wine. Like last summer, we spent time in Champagne. A month out there just understanding Champagne. Right,
Yeah.
that's a vast region. There's no way I can conquer that in a month. But I take notes. I'm very rigorous with my notes. It's a passion for me to better understand it. And I will say, right, I do move with a chip on my shoulder. I think like I want to be honest, in that as well, because I think that's all right. Right, I think it's okay to be self-aware and know where you are in the
Yeah.
spectrum of everything that's happening. But I always describe us. The brand was created out of curiosity, right? And it continues to thrive out of curiosity as
Yeah.
well. Like our willingness to be innovative, our willingness to blend traditional methods of winemaking with more obscure, approaches to it.
Um, I love champagne. I just want to throw that out
I
there.
got you. You'll be the first one to get a
um,
bottle.
I am so excited now. I was excited before, but now you've really elevated my excitement. But I won't gonna admit, like, I am not much of a student of wine. I don't know about you, Alexis.
Yeah, no, and it's so funny. I'm going to ask you kind of a off-script question about being a student. 'Cause you talk about being a student. And I remember when I turned 21, right? I was so excited. I went to the gas station and I bought this like $9 wine. I was like, I'm so excited.
Oh my
And
God.
it tastes just like grape juice. I was like, and I thought it was great. I was like, this is amazing.
Did you pour it over ice too?
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
She thought about it a little bit.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, right? Because even sometimes when some people are like inexperienced, like with wine, how long did it take you to be a student of your craft, like learning about different wines? Because some people go to restaurants and they're like, I have no idea what to say. They just say, oh, surprise me, or I'll take a house red, house white. Don't even know what to say. So how long did it take you to figure out, understand different type of grapes, soil to grow the wine? Like how did you understand that?
I mean, first thing is like I've sat with again, I was sharing different winemakers to understand viticulture, understand different grapes, and I mean that's just me being a nerd about it, wanting to understand climate and how it affects the grapes and the crop. But if I were just talking to someone who wanted to casually learn about wine, um, I would pick a wine. I would ask you what your favorite wine is, and ask me to tell you where it was made, what year, and what the varietal was. Right, and from there, start with the region and year. So if you know that you like Napa style wines or Bordeaux wines from 2000 and whatever year, commit to that year and commit to learning everything that happened in that year so you can inform your palate. Or widen it up, right? Say that I only like Bordeaux and drink Bordeaux from different regions so that you can begin to inform your palate. The beautiful thing is you got Google now, right? Like, so you can literally learn the ins and outs of a grape and take record of it so that you don't have to just walk into a restaurant and ask blindly. Now, you should be able to ask your somm at that restaurant to help you with an informed decision. Like I like pairing with meals. I love Mediterranean meals. I love pairing wines with Mediterranean meals. Asking your somm to pair the meal of choice with your wine glass is another way to kind of just easily understand what this wine was created to do and what the best pairing match is.
See, now I know. When I go, I'm not going to ask for the house red. I'll tell them exactly what I know
Yeah.
and what to say. Kelly, I know you mentioned champagne, right? I know you mentioned like how, things come together, but what do you think about like the business operations and just, from start to finish? I know that's really hard. Kelly, what are your thoughts on that as well to ask Terrence?
Well, first of all, I am Mediterranean, and I agree that wine and Mediterranean people, we go together amazingly. So I have my Mediterranean mother and grandma here, and when I was talking to them about you today, my mom was asking a lot of questions about your business operations, and she was like, "Does he do everything from start to finish?" And I was like, "You know what? I'm going to let Terrence answer that
That's a
question."
great question. So, Mom, we have different pieces of our business. So we focus on small batch production, right? This allows us to maintain the quality of our wine and also just maintain the scale of our business, right? We source everything. So from the grapes to we own every part of the business, rather I should say. So from working with the vineyard to source the actual grapes to being there during harvest season to picking and nurturing those vines to make sure there's no pesticides to make sure that they are healthy, all the way through the process of bottling. So fermentation to the mixing to the using of alcohol bricks to the blending process. We are there every step of the way. And that wasn't always the case in the beginning of our business. Like when we were just starting off, we we couldn't afford to own every aspect of the business. But again, in being a student and wanting to care about the final end of the product, every detail of the product, we begin to buy back different pieces of it. And so we own every process all the way up to bottling, and then we are responsible for aligning with distribution partners in every state. So this is where we get into the conversation around compliance, right?
Right.
How does it get to your doorstep, or how does it get to the restaurant for you to enjoy it on the shelves of a store? Is when you have to have a distribution partner in every single state that you want your wine and product to be sold in.
Now, kind of talking a bit more high level on biz ops, what would you say, as you were starting to build this process to where it is now, what was the most challenging part versus, I don't want to say the most rewarding because I feel like it's
Yeah.
all rewarding, but maybe your most favorite part of the process that you truly just enjoyed putting time into to learn?
We always underestimated the demand for our
Okay.
wines, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a good situation to be in. Like in the beginning, we would sell out all the time, right? And
Yeah.
it's a great, you would think it's a great problem to have, but we didn't understand how to scale our business, right?
Yeah.
We didn't understand how to keep proper inventory. And then we didn't know how to say no. So when certain companies ask for a national partnership, right? For
Right.
example, I always tell the story of we had a season where Target, Total Wines, and Whole Foods wanted to stock our wine.
Right.
We did not have the supply. And I can say that now. That's not the case today, but then we did not have the supply. And it was very painful lesson of, one, just being self-aware that we're not ready as a business to be in 900 stores,
Hmm.
right? But it was a lesson that we needed to understand and go back and say, well, next year we're going to grow and bottle this much wine, right?
Yeah.
And the risk, though, talking about being risk adverse. What if those companies change their mind? What if they move in a different direction? We had to be prepared for that. And so it's just been this, steady tweaking of our forecasting process
Yeah.
and the management of our inventory. I think was some of the biggest headaches early on, because again, it's a good thing that people are buying your wine, but it's a bad thing when people want to buy your wine and you don't have any.
And how was the process of going about, you said at the beginning you couldn't afford certain aspects of the process. How did you go about starting to build that capital to, engage in conversations that could get you there?
Um, it's actually a real time conversation. So everything that we've done, everything that you see with Michael Lavelle has been 100% bootstrapped.
Yeah.
We are actively in the process of raising capital, and so I can answer that question for you in about 6 months from now, right? But it's just about sustaining the business. I think being honest with yourself as an entrepreneur about what risks you should be taking, what risks you can afford to take, and I think we just knew very early on, because we didn't have the luxury of certain brands
Yeah.
to tie ourselves to, that we can't pretend to be bigger than we actually are. And I think that uh, it's looking yourself in the mirror and understanding where you're at, comparing yourself to brands that are in the same space that you're in. Because as much as I'd love to say, hey, we'll be the LVMH of the future, I
Yeah.
got to play in the space that I'm in today, right? And that is also just tying back to authenticity allowed us to thrive, because we know exactly who we are and what our mission is.
And I know, like, when we were talking, like, even you, like Alexis, we were talking about how hard it is to control our passions
Yeah.
and, like, kind of just trying to hone that in. And I feel like that's a big piece of what you're saying. Like, we were just talking about how excited we would be to be here and get to talk with you and kind of trying to reel it in and find these succinct themes and things we can discuss with you. So, Alexis, I know you had another follow-up question for.
Yeah, I was just so curious, one, about like delegating and trusting your business partners, because you can't be everywhere at once. Like, you have your vineyard in California, you live in New York, you have to be, here in like Philadelphia, back you're from Chicago. Like, how big is like delegating, certain tasks to people, but also trusting like they'll get it done, and building like a team around you, and building like, and also getting like a board of like mentors of when, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, like I need help.
Um, so today, because this answer would have been completely different a couple years ago, but today I do have a board of mentors that keeps me in line. And there would be no Michael Lavelle if it wasn't about teamwork, right? If I didn't believe in the capability of my partners so that we can thrive. But I think it's a confidence thing. You and I have talked about this before. The confidence is just about as knowing what your skills are and what they aren't, and being able to trust someone else, with the ability to push that plan forward. And so we do a healthy amount of recalibrating of our business. These are the goals that we set out for. Are we still aligned with those goals? If not, we need to move the piece, We need to, and that could be me, right? I could be the thing that's in the way, but it takes some self-awareness as an entrepreneur to know that, and when to outsource outside of yourself. And so I think we've been very quick at identifying bottlenecks in our business so that we can continue to blossom, as a young business. It's the one thing we have a very flexible, we're a very lean business. Our overhead is very fixed. Again, we get to set how much wine we want to make the next year. We keep our costs very low. But we're also a very flexible business. I have a model of flexibility that I stress with my partners is that we do not need to pretend to know everything. We need to find experts who do, right? The moment you tell me you don't know, the follow-up response needs to be, well, I'm speaking with someone who does. And that is how we get through any bottlenecks that we have.
And I'm excited, speaking of bottles, I'm so curious, what's the story behind the marketing and just like the label behind this wine?
Yeah. So what you all don't see is there's two other varietals that we have. We have our flagship, which is rosé, then our award-winning Zinfandel, and our award-winning Chenin Blanc. And the label that you're looking at is actually an iris flower. So when you see, you actually might see a picture that pops up there.
Yeah.
When you see our rosé bottle, it's actually a pinkish, purplish hue. It's a gradient image. And it's the iris flower. It represents royalty, represents power, right? Represents respect. It is also an ode to Iris Rideau, who is the first Black woman of Creole descent to own and operate a winery in the United States of America. And so it's a very subtle history fact, but something that we're very proud of when we speak about our wines. And so this is the Iris collection. These are all California style wines. Our next iteration, which is something that's a secret here, that we will be doing a sparkling that will be a part of this collection. And then after that, we're moving on to our passport collection, which is when we work with vintners and winemakers across the world. And so that's when that champagne is coming.
Yeah. And I love that. I think it's about like the themes in our lives. And, Kelly's very big on themes as well. So do you see, and I'll let Kelly ask a question because she just, generates it like so well, but passing it on about themes and just different wines and like different categories and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think so. When I first met you and we first started talking, I kind of jotted down a couple words that immediately sprung to mind. The first one was curiosity. And you've honestly already talked about it so much that I don't want to delve too much into it. The second one was the authenticity, risk adverse. And the fourth one, which I loved, is the fact that you're willing to collaborate and you have this strong sense of teamwork. And I kind of wanted to delve a little bit deeper into that one, just out of curiosity. How do you deal with like disagreements with your team or moments where you feel like half of you are on one side, half of you are on the other side? And how do you translate that into something productive that gets you to this beautiful bottle of wine?
That's a great question. I think it is the same mindset we're talking about with flexibility, right? Like you are an athlete, right? You worked out. It's your test of strength is the ability of how flexible you are. I think that's the same thing when it comes to a company and any mental flexibility as well, that people are going to have different perspectives, right? Their perspective isn't necessarily wrong. And there have been times where I've had to take the step back as the head of house, as the CEO, and let another perspective thrive and do what's best for the business. And so when disagreements do come up, I think that it's just to meet it with a place of understanding versus I know what is best for the business, right? These other perspectives have also just been invaluable to us as a company. When I started thinking about different perspectives, I'm also thinking about D&I. I'm also thinking about our efforts to be cognizant that we're hiring equitably, right? From all walks of life, from all races, from all creeds, because I understand that I want to create a company that is reflective of the world that we live in. When I started this, it was me and my partners, who I also consider my brothers. But as our business continues to scale, we're reaching more people, and yes, they relate to the quality of our wine and the daringness to create something that didn't exist before. But I also want to make sure that we're inclusive of other palates that I might not be familiar with, right? You might have a preference that I've never even considered. We talk about how great wines are in Greece. I can't pronounce them, but I would love to try them, right? I would love to have them.
That's why I brought my family here. We were going to
Yeah,
offer you a year of Greek
I
lessons.
need that. I need that, please. And so it's one of those things that you maintain a flexible mindset, and that's how you avoid that.
And kind of talking along the line, you mentioned, you consider your partners your brothers, and
Yeah,
kind of going a little bit deeper into family in general.
yeah,
I, have watched my parents put so much into their business, and I feel that their businesses have almost been a baby in themselves, right?
yeah, yeah,
They've had to put so much time and effort to see it become so successful, and
yeah,
it's so inspiring. And they've also managed to balance that with, me and my sister,
yeah, yeah.
and their own relationship. So I'm just kind of curious how you find balance when business is getting crazy to make time for those moments for, your family, your brothers, sisters, who may it be?
Man, that's a heavy question because I'm actively navigating that,
Yeah.
right now. I am a son. I am I'm a brother. I'm a husband. I am, a student. I'm a business partner. Like I wear so many different hats, and I'd had to have an honest conversation with myself around time management and organization and prioritizing the things, and also communicating where I'm at.
Yeah.
On these things, right? Sometimes we forget how simply just effective communication is, where you're at on the scale. I think I tell you all the time, like if you come into the office hours, I always ask people where you're at. Like, what number are you at today? Are you at a 7, 9, 3, whatever the case may be? I tend to start the day at a 5, right? That's just baseline. I'm a regular guy. If I go and work out, I can get myself up to an 8, right? But that's me. That's how I keep myself centered. If I don't do something for myself and the next thing I do is for someone else, I'm probably ending the day at a -3. And so I always try to make sure that I'm doing something selfishly. The early morning, 4 to 6 in the morning, and I'm not one of those entrepreneur bros that's telling you to start your day at 4 o'clock. I'm just telling you what works for me. It's getting up and having some time to myself. That way I can be a better um, I'll say a better servant to those around me, right? And that's what the goal of all of this is, right? Is to create something that people find value in, right? That's the type of man that I am, right? Whenever I walk in a room, I want to be a servant to those around me. I think that's a testament of being a good entrepreneur, just a good person. But if you don't have anything left for yourself, how can you be a servant to others?
So are you a 5 before or after you have coffee?
I am. I know coffee is needed. It's
Yes.
it's
Yes.
needed. If I could put a coffee maker right next to my bed, I would. And roll out and make some espresso and be good to go. I
Exactly.
just discovered pour over, by the
Uh-oh.
way. Yeah, like it's
Okay.
it's a game changer.
Oh. Well, I know that some of us might be starting at a 5, but I know we're going to be at a 6 because I know or maybe even a 10, because we're so anxious to try our wine. But my last question that I have, and I'd be remiss not to ask it, what is your favorite wine?
Mm, my favorite wine is Michael Lavelle. Why would you ask me
Of course,
anything
yeah,
else?
and I just wanted to put a plug in there.
Yeah,
That's all.
no, actually, my favorite wine is actually by Domaine Dujac. It is a province out in France. They make an amazing Burgundy, and I've only ever had one bottle because it is wildly expensive, and it is. I'm waiting to open it until something incredible happens in my life. I don't know what that incredible thing is, but I know it's time to open this bottle of Dujac. But I would say, yeah, that's outside of Michael Lavelle, and I know this is being recorded, so I got to say it again.
Great
Outside of Michael
answer.
It's a
Lavelle,
great.
yes, I would say Dujac.
Um, Terrence, so to kind of wind this all down,
Talk about it.
you're welcome for that joke. How do you wind down? What is your way that you relax when you are trying to find your own moment, your own time uh, for yourself? How do you invest in yourself?
Uh, Still working on that too. I wish I had a polished answer for that, right? Like I feel like I'm always on the go. What I really like to do is travel.
Yeah.
I mean, like I like to do that independent of anyone else. I like discovering, new cultures, new experiences. And I think that's a thing that keeps me balanced. Other than that, it's learning. Like I'm always curious about
Yeah.
what's happening in the world, any new technologies, not even related to wine, just how people are successful, how people are finding healing in their lives. Like that's something I practice, just learning what makes other people successful.
Hmm.
And so I would stick to that, but it's a balance thing, right? I don't know that
Right.
I've figured that all the way out, right? And that's just a moment of authenticity, right? I think we're all balancing responsibility, all the hats that we're wearing, and figuring out what is working and what's not.
Yeah. 100%. And Speaking of wine,
Mhm.
I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to chat with all of us today. If we could just give Terrence a big round of applause. Um, and I know I promised my Yaya that she would have some wine.
Oh, we're gonna
So,
get Yaya some wine.
yeah, so I was wondering if you could lead us through a wine tasting.
Absolutely. And I just want to add to that. I want to thank you all for being here with me, for participating in this dream with me. Like I'm actively dreaming right now. And all of you are playing a role in that. And that dream is Michael Lavelle. So thank you, thank you, thank you for taking the time to hang out with me. We're going to get ready to pour some glasses of wine
All
for you
right.
right now. While we do that, I'll wait till everyone gets a glass and then we'll kind of walk through that. You give us, what, 5 or so minutes to do so? And
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
works.
Oh, yeah. Does anyone have a question in the audience for Terrence? You can come around and bring the mic too.
Man, and it can be wine related, it can be anything life related, doesn't matter.
I see some
Entrepreneur,
thinking. Oh, in the back? Okay.
talk
We'll
to
go
me.
here and then we'll go to the front. Okay. Yep. I'll come to you. Don't worry. No, sit down. I got you. Sit down. Sit down. I got you.
Okay, yeah, no, you're good. You're actually very easy.
Hello. Can you hear me? Good?
Yes,
Okay.
we're good. Talk to
All
me.
right. So you said in the beginning that you were faced with a lot of no's when you were coming up with your business.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us a little bit about what some of those no's were and
Yeah,
how you handled them?
yeah. So I talk a lot about what the typical image of someone who sells wine looks like, what a winemaker is, right? And I'm not talking about feelings. I'm just talking about raw facts, right? That there are 10,000 plus wineries in the world. Less than 2% are BIPOC, right? Less, even smaller than that, you start thinking other races as well. So when I would walk into certain spaces, there's a lot of question around the quality of my wine. The first thing is it sweet? No. But you would know that if we just open the bottle, right? We could have a conversation around the wine if you simply just open the bottle. And so there's a lot of rejection at the initial level when you're starting off as a wine brand, any brand, right? You've got to get that validity, that, kind of that wind under your wings so that people are willing to try it. And the way that we actually got around that is we realized that we were actually playing too small. We thought we were a small brand, so we had to play in small spaces. And one of the first accounts that actually picked us up was a Michelin star restaurant in Chicago, where I'm from. And that kind of gave us the positioning to then go out and say, hey, if they're willing to place us on the menu, this is one of the most revered, this is the global, recognized brand, the chef global, the restaurant global. If they're willing to take a chance on us, why haven't you? All right, and so other than that, the other piece is distribution. So you may not know this, but distributors are basically stakeholders. They have to buy into your business to then resell your business, right? They have to believe in your product in order for it to move. And so if you don't have proper distribution, it's almost like having a bad agent. They're not going to get you the right opportunities. They're not going to get you the right placements. And so very early on, we did not have great distribution. We had to settle for who we could legally be within the lines of to sell our wine. And so there were a lot of no's in getting the right representation that could have thrown this mission off very early on.
Awesome. And then Anthony, I think you had a question. Here you go.
So, if I wanted to make wine, what would be your biggest tip?
I would tell you to travel the world. I would tell you to go hike a mountain. I would tell you to make sure there's nothing else in the world you'd rather do before you decide you want to make wine, right? Because it is definitely one of the harder things that I've ever had to do in my life. But I am serious about that. But in all seriousness, if I wanted to guide you, I would tell you to start an apprenticeship with a winemaker, right? Because if you really want to have an impact on wine, like you really want to innovate with wine, you have to understand how it's made. Anybody can slap a label on a bottle. That's not a hard thing to do. But if you really want to have true IP, like a true opinion, then you have to understand how it's made.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh, well, let's start with Pennsylvania and why I can't sell the wine here. Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of regulation that comes with selling wine in all of the states, right? All states have unique laws as it pertains to the ability to sell wine and spirits and beer, even in some spaces. And some states are tighter with regulation than others. So Pennsylvania is one where it's heavily regulated. They act as a distributor, right? I am unable to. Sell wine without the approval of the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, the state of Pennsylvania has a board; they got to vote on the product. It's a little bit challenging. Whereas, let's think, New York, we have to be vetted by the Federation of the Tobacco, Firearms, and Alcohol. Our business is registered there. Our product is registered there. So if you ever happen and someone with ATS was here, they look at that bottle and say, "Is this registered with us?" Yes, we're good to go. That's how you know this bottle belongs to Michael Lavelle. And so there's a legal process with making sure that we're registered at the federal level, which is actually fairly easy. It is the state level that presents the challenges because of all the different nuance that happens in each state is very hard to do. This is also going back to the distribution portion. Is your distributor network wide enough to encompass multiple states, or do you have to be more strategic, like a state like Pennsylvania or Tennessee, where they have very unique laws, and you have to align yourself with them? So if you want to get into that space, you have to align yourself with distributors who understand the compliance, right?
I think we had one more question from LJ. Yeah. There you
Hello.
What's up,
So
LJ?
yeah, my question was, I kind of run into the challenge with like bringing my friends over to my apartment and sharing a glass of wine. So your wine is more on the drier side, and I prefer drier wines. I enjoy like the tannins, like
This guy knows what he's talking about.
yeah. So I try and get them to try, the Bordeaux's, the Burgundies, the Barolos, all of that. But they're like, it's so dry. So do you have any recommendations, I guess you could say, to kind of like, allowing these individuals to kind of come to this side, like cross the threshold from the Moscatos, from like the, that realm to the drier side?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love that question, right? Because I do not make fun of people for liking Moscatos or dessert wines. And the way I look at it is, at least you're drinking wine, right? And we can convert you on this side in time. I would ask you though, is what are you pairing with your wines when you're serving it to your friends? Is it just a raw bottle? Is it a box? Like, what's going on here? Do you have the actual spread for them, right, to enjoy the wines? Because if you do, then you are having foods that balance out the acidity, right? You're having foods that balance out the tannic experience as well, that can actually bring life and more liveliness to the experience that you're having with your wine. Are you serving food, or you just getting
Yeah,
people
no,
drunk?
like I
which
made
one
them
is
a
it?
beautiful like braised short rib dinner cooked like for 4 hours. They were like, this wine is so dry. Do you have something sweet? But
Yeah. So you wait, say that again. You making a short braised rib, and they're not
a,
enjoying that?
a braised short rib.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Like, why don't y'all have dinner with this guy? Like, he's, none of my friends make short braised ribs. No, I continue doing what you're doing, but make it. I think you're going the right path. The other thing about this too, wine is highly subjective, right? Like, it's not one of those things that everyone on here, is you can we're all gonna have different favorite restaurants, different pairs of shoes, like different music artists. Wine is no different. It's highly subjective. It's art, right? And so I wouldn't necessarily focus on converting them. It's just as much as letting them know that there's different options out there for them to enjoy, right? So if it's too tannic, too acidic for you, all right, well, try the Chablis, right? Try something that's a little milder on the acidity for you, right? And make an experience out of it. I like that you're doing that. That's actually how we started. Our brother is hosting similar dinners like that and just creating a community where people can ask those questions. Because we used to show up with like Alexis with box wines. It's what we could afford at the time. I'm not trying to. It's a real thing. You got to start somewhere.
Thank you.
No, thank you, man.
Any more questions? Last minute questions? No?
Please,
Oh, yes.
please. We can start to pass out the glasses as well. Please.
All right. So my question is kind of twofold. One, could you talk about the process of actually raising funds and what that means? Because a lot of times we hear people saying we're raising funds and doing things like that, but could you explain a little bit about what raising funds actually mean and what that process is for? And as well as what do you intend on doing with the funds once you do attain it?
Yeah. So the question was, what is the process of raising funds, right? How has that been? And then what do we plan to do with the funds once we've raised them, right? All right. And so the process has been, I'd give you the real. It's been organized in our financial documents so that they can be put in a space to be digested, right? It's been then shopping around to different VCs or private equity firms or private investors, right, who would be interested in Michael Lavelle is tapping into our network. And so we've actually been very blessed because this is the first time that we've ever done anything like publicly raising funds to have garnered a lot of interest in that. But it was also very eye-opening and organizing all the details of our business. So talking about the inventory piece, not just the finances, but we're talking about EBITDA, we're talking P&Ls, we're talking, just every aspect of our business and sharing it with folks. The goal, though, is expansion. It takes a lot of money to operate all states. It takes a lot of money and inventory to be able to answer Target's call, answer these national partnerships calls. And the one thing that we've realized is we've never had a substantial injection of cash, and so because of that, we haven't been in a position to actually create more wine to address those issues, right? So it's a scaling thing. So it's getting back to scaling, it's expansion, it's building up our team so that we can actually continue to hire and employ more. And it is also broadening to more global acquisition of grapes and territories as well. Yeah, what else? Yeah.
Amazing. Oh.
So hopefully everyone got their glass of wine. Yaya is almost done hers. She said it was, yeah, she said it was Polioreo, which means one of the best wines. So, Sule ευχαριστώ που το άρεσε το κρασί. Yeah, but I would love, Terrence, if you could walk us through, just a traditional wine tasting. What
Yeah,
should we?
this is actually my favorite part, and I won't keep you all from drinking the wine too long. I just want you to take a second and take the glass and hover it over your nose, right, like such. All right, I want you to gather the aromas of the glass. You're going to get notes of bergamot, of citrus, of white flower. A little background about this grape: it is a Chenin Blanc from the Clarksburg region area in California. Fun note, Chenin Blanc is actually originally from France, that this grape migrated over somewhere in the mid-19th century into the California region, and it thrives specifically in the Clarksburg area because of the similarities in their climate, right? And so after you get this whiff here, you're gonna get your notes of bergamot citrus, you're gonna take a sip. Just take one nice sip together. Move it around. You like it, right? Move it around your tongue just a little bit, right? Get a little bit of flour, get a little bit of Granny Apple Smith apples there. It's got a nice glide to it, mild acidity. It is not too much bite, but it is dry. And Chenin Blancs typically can be a little sweeter on the finish, a little sweeter and high acidity. And so this one's a little milder there, right? And then you can take your actual glass now. Full swip. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah. All right. It's a very
This is so
crisp
good.
wine. All right. Very easy, very gloss on the palate. I joke all the time that a bottle of this will have you barefoot, so be careful. All right. It is about 13.2 alcohol, so there's a generous amount of alcohol in the bottle. But enjoy.
Give it up one last round of applause.
Yeah.
Terrence. One of the professors, Professor Brenner, my colleague, wants you to talk about local land use regulations. He has no idea, Brenner. He is our entrepreneur in residence, but he's not an attorney. Land use about PA? Oh, the vineyards, like out in California? Yeah, ask Brenner.
What specifically do you want to know about that? That's a very specific question. I don't even know who I'm talking to. Who am I speaking? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we need permissions at every single level to operate, from the making of the wine to the machinery that we use to make the wine. But be honest, because we outsource those who operate the machinery, we don't have to worry about that, but we need to make sure that they are licensed to operate that, right? And so that's a great, no one has ever asked me that question, but yes, there's compliance in every single level of our business, and it really just comes down to the county that you're in. Like you said, there's state, there's local, and then there's the county areas and laws you need to be aware of as well. But we have not, and I want to cross my fingers on this, when it came to running the operation in California, we were not met with resistance there. It was about knowing the information, making sure that our paperwork was completely filled out. And once that was done, we were pretty much good to go. All right. It's a great question, though. Thank you for that. So we are getting ready to make the last edition of our California style wines, which would be a sparkling wine. Once we do that, we will close off the Iris collection. And so we will only make those four for Iris, which would be the Rosé, the Zinfandel, the Chenin Blanc, and the sparkling, all right? After that, the goal is to actually kick off our passport collection. And this is when we get to, obviously have fun traveling the world, but form partnerships with vineyards across the world. So if you like a Malbec from Chile, we want to launch that, right? If you like a Chablis, if you want to, try a Chardonnay from South Africa, we'd like to do that. But even to do our champagne will be a part of our passport collection as well. The last piece of this is our artist series, and this is where we work with local artists nationally, globally, and partner with them because there is a intersection between art and wine, and we partner with them to educate about art, but also put their labels, have them redesign our labels, but also sell exclusive art as well through our partnership. And so, yeah, it would be starting partnerships globally is the next phase of our business. Any other question for me, please? How's the wine? I'm okay. I see a lot of nods of approval. All right, good. Yeah, what do you want? So you all got a cheese, right? So that's a good pairing. What's the hot food over here? What? What? Pigs and so what do you pair that with? I love that. But what do you pair it with? I've never eaten that, so I don't know what to pair it with. I'm simple though. Like you though, I can fire up a grill, and that would be my go-to. And I'm most likely going to have a nice red to pair with any type of rotisserie chicken or sausages or steak or whatever. Like that's my natural inclination. Like when weather is like this, hell, if it's raining, like I could try to fire up my grill if I can make it work. Like I would rather do it that way. But if you like fish, any type of shellfish, any shrimp, any type of white fish pairs really nicely with the wine that we're having right now. Anything that's any fresh salads, right? Think about that pairing. Any scallops would go really nicely with the wine that you have right now. But there are also obscure pairings, right? Like red wines and chocolate go really nice together. Champagne and popcorn go really nice together. I see someone saying, yeah, so you know about that one, right? Like, yeah, there's a lot of good pairings out there. And apparently pigs in a blanket, so we got to figure that out. Any other questions for me, though? Take a photo. You want to take a photo? Go.
Also, if you want a refill, she said you can just come on up here and get a refill. So, yeah.